What's up, everybody? For all of you rare Rogue Trader 40K collectors, this might actually be important to watch for you real quick. So, we have a bunch of old Rogue Trader models, squads, Chaos squads, some Orc mechanics. We have some unlisted models here. This Orc mechanic with a wrench has greatly went up in price apparently. I'm seeing him for hundreds of dollars because he's uncatalogued. I got very lucky in finding him. I wanted him for all the tin boys since he's got a wrench and he looks like he put them all together. Here we have one of the first Terminators. He's been in an alcohol and awesome bath for the past month. We finally got him clean. The point is, look at the condition of the material that he's made in, right? You can tell that all of this pewter is 30 years old, right? You look at all of these guys and you can kind of see, even these Chaos Squats, that not only came out of an alcohol bath, but I also scrubbed the hell out of them with soap. So they're about as clean and pristine as they can get right now before they get primed and painted. They're kind of shiny, but not really, right? A lot of that has to do with how much time did the model have to be weathered before somebody put paint on it, right? If somebody bought one of these squats, took it out and primed it and painted it the very first day, then there's going to be paint over this pewter to protect it. And it's going to look a little bit better when you strip all the paint off of it, but it's still going to be 30-year-old pewter. So it's not going to, it's going to look this way. It's going to be a little bit faded. Some are a little bit darker than the others. That's probably just because they got painted later. There was, more exposure to the elements. But they all look around the same. These are all legit. These are all like 35, 40 years old. And you can see it on all of them. They're all weathered, a little bit different, but they are all weathered, right? Even this Necron, he just got scrubbed. He's got some shiny parts on him, if I can get it to zoom. But you can also see the dark parts on him that almost look like there's dirt on them. These are just imperfections in the pewter, being exposed to the elements. And this is after I've cleaned this guy up. I can scrub on him all day. He's still going to have some darker spots on him. So, all in all, cool. I know all these are authentic and I was very happy. But I had something come in that looks suspect. Real suspect. Suspect AF. And it started to worry me. Because the last thing you want when you're buying one of these old 35-year-old collectible models is to get one that was recast. Now, I know when we talk about recast, people typically think of the new models that are out, the new armies, where people can recast them and sell them for cheaper than Games Workshop is selling them and make a buck. But here's the real question. Why would you recast brand new models, right? When you could take the time to recast these old models that sell for hundreds of dollars. Now, you're not just selling your recast for 25 bucks, you're selling your recast for $200. So it makes it much more worth it. Thing is, with these old models, you have to recast using pewter, right? These aren't resin models. So, why is this a big deal? Why are we bringing this up? Because one of these models is a fake. If you look around the table, these guys are resin. This guy is not fake, thank goodness. Everything checks out about him. He's very rare. He is real. We'll talk about that. This guy is super rare. Right? He's in pretty good detail now that I've washed him. But guess what? You can tell. You can tell this is a 35-year-old model. You can tell because of the weathering on the pewter. And then we get to this guy. Notice how this guy shines. I mean, he literally effing shines, right? We look at this dwarf. He came with this gun, and it literally is shiny. Look at that. Look at that, right? Because that's not 30-year-old pewter. This is brand effing new pewter. This model was probably cast a year ago, not 30 or 40 years ago, right? And before they sell a recast model like this and try to pawn it off as an old model, they paint it. Of course they're going to paint it so you can't see how shiny it is underneath, because you're going to be like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be a 40-year-old pewter model. How the hell is it shiny underneath? Especially, like, look at this guy's legs. His legs, they just shine. They almost look like they're made out of a different pewter. But you can just see how this guy shines. Even if the zoom isn't great, you can see the shininess to it. Here's his gun. His gun literally shines. It looks like it was cast a week ago. Now, what's the best way to tell? What is the best way to tell? I hate to say it, but as soon as you get any of these old, rare, collectible Rogue Trader models, especially if they're painted, you're gonna have to strip the paint. You're never going to know if you're getting a recast unless you're stripping the paint off the model. Because first, that's the only way you're going to be able to see the condition of the pewter underneath. But also, there's a tell. When you are soaking these in alcohol and you're trying to get the paint off, and I'll be honest with you guys, this kind of scared me. And one of the more expensive squats that I got that is completely off the market, super rare. Here he is. I actually had to start stripping the paint off of him to make sure that he was not a counterfeit model, because there's a huge price tag on this squat, and I had to make sure. I thought about maybe leaving the paint on him because it was all right. It looked like somebody tried, but some of the paint had like lumpiness on it, so I was like, no. Now I actually have a reason to take the paint off of him and to make sure that he's not a counterfeit model. So the first thing I can tell you right now, I'm breathing a sigh of relief. Okay, this guy is not counterfeit. There's a couple of different tells. First of all, you can tell that this is a 35-year-old pewter model because some of the pewter bends over time, and when people bend it back, it becomes weak and brittle. Like this hammer, I know this hammer's been bent a little bit, and someone's unbent it, and then it got bent and unbent a little bit. If I bend this hammer left and right just a little bit, I actually feel like it might break off at the base. That's a pretty good sign. You're going to expect a 40-year-old brittle model like this to have some weak points like that, where it may have gotten bent and unbent. Nothing is going to come out perfectly straight. Actually, look at this banner that this guy's holding. It's not perfectly straight. I was going to get some tools and straighten it out. All right, but the most important thing, the biggest tell, is how the paint comes off. Right? Look at this guy. He's got no paint on him whatsoever. I barely had to soak him in alcohol, not even 90%. It's like 70%. As soon as I took the toothbrush to him, all of the paint comes off. Okay? The primer comes off and the paint on top of it. It'll all just come off as one, and it'll peel right off of him. Nice and easy. It'll flake right off, primer and all. Because as soon as you introduce a little bit of alcohol to it, that paint's only been on there for a month. So it literally just liquefies and strips right off, primer and all. We look at an authentic model here. Okay? The paint isn't just stripping off of him like it was from the other guy. The paint's coming off, but it's leaving the primer behind it. That's a very good sign. That shows that this primer has been on here for 30 years and it's not just going to come off. So you're going to get the top paint to come off first, and then you're going to be left with stains of primer. And mind you, I've been scrubbing on this guy with alcohol and with a toothbrush to get all this stuff off. This guy, the shiny mofo, all the paint came off of him instantly. It wasn't no thing. And when you can see how shiny it is. Look at that. Look how much light that's reflecting. You can see how shiny it is right off rip. This guy, he might be pretty clean underneath, but he doesn't actually reflect light and shine like this guy does. Like this gun, way more reflective, way more new looking. Even though I just cleaned this thing up and scrubbed the hell out of it the best I could. So, to my knowledge, this is an authentic squat. And like I said, you can tell because the hammer's bent a little bit. This back thing, I mean, this metal just looks like it's 30 years old. And like I said, the paint actually took a while to come off. Whereas this guy, you could pretty much just scrape him and the paint would just come off in sections and it would just peel right off of him. So I've been pretty lucky. Out of all the squats that I've gotten, this is the only counterfeit one. I didn't pay much for him at all, of course, and I really don't care. I'm not really trying to collect him. This guy, I needed to make sure he was real, and I did get a lot of the paint off of him, and like I said, you can still see the primer trying to stay on there because it's been on there for 30 years. But this is the first time I've seen it. It doesn't surprise me that recasters would try to recast the most valuable ones. And of course, we're talking about recasting in pewter. So it's not something that's easy to do. But they're doing it. They are, because that's where the real money is. Like I said, you sell one of these guys for a couple $100. I mean, that's worth making him, even if it is a little bit more difficult to work with pewter than to resin, right? If you want to talk about some of like the real old school models, I mean, look at this guy. Oh, he can barely stand. He looks really whitewashed compared to everybody else. And it's taken, since this guy's 35, 40 years old, the first Terminator, it has taken a whole month to get the paint off of him. And I've had to scrub the hell out of it for a month straight. You can tell this guy's legit. And it's part of the reason why I had to take him apart. I had to take him apart to make sure he was hollow on the inside so that everything checks out. You wanna check these bases and make sure everything is written on here properly. This one says Firer, and the back says Games Workshop 1987. And that's easy to, that's not that hard for them to fake, right? But they're never going to be able to pass out. Look how shiny he is here. He's shinier than everything around him, right? And the camera might not show it as well as seeing it with the naked eye, but you can just see that this guy is just a whole nother level of shininess. And thank goodness it's the only one that I've got like that. So he is a counterfeit for sure. And then I had to make sure this guy, who is one of my more valuable unreleased models, I had to make sure, I started freaking out. I had to make sure he was legit. So I started stripping the paint off of him. And the way that it's been coming off, I feel very confident saying that this guy is legit. So thank goodness for that. This guy came from a reputable shop. And before I buy anything like this, I make sure to talk to them. I ask them, what's on the bottom of the base? What information comes on him? I ask them all these questions and I tell them, if this guy's not legit, this is a recast, just don't bother selling it to me, because your shop's out of state, but I will gladly drive this model back to you and you can explain to me face to face how you think you didn't rip me off if you sent me a recast. And if you reach out to people and you're honest to them about that and you tell them that this is serious for you, you know what? if it's a recast and they know they're trying to rip you off, they probably just won't even sell it to you. They'll wait for somebody that they think they can actually get away with it. So talk to these sellers, right? Actually talk to them, ask questions. What's the bottom of the base say? Does everything check out? I want to make sure it's legit, because I would be freaking the hell out right now if the paint just came off of this guy without the primer staying on it, and there's globs of primer everywhere that just does not want to come off, even though he's been soaking in alcohol. Here's a good example of it. It's not coming off of this thing. Those are all very good signs. That shows me that this paint has probably been on here for 30 years. So, big sigh of relief there. Big sigh of relief there. So I wanted to kind of get this out there to anybody that's thinking about collecting some of the old Rogue Trader models, because you can find deals for them online. Great. But if you go to like WorthPoint, an auction site that only wants to sell these legitimate ones, read through their article, because they will tell you how some of these models being 200, couple $100 now. I just saw this mechanic. Somebody wants like $250 for him. It might be Australian money, but yeah, because he's unlisted and unreleased, and he's got that big ass wrench, and he just looks cool for a mech boy. Like I said, he's the guy that built all these other guys together. Yeah, somebody could try to forge him, since they can sell him for $200. You know, all these mech boys, they're $100 a piece, especially for the Space Marine one. He's even more. Be careful. You may want to make sure they don't look too shiny and the paint doesn't come off too easy. Chaos squats or squats, I would be concerned with all of them. All of these are real, thank goodness. Just look out for that shiny. And even from here, you can tell how this guy's just a lighter color of shininess. Pewter, he almost looks like he's a low grade silver, right? So, and this is why I had to take the Terminator apart. I wasn't sure. Like, these Terminators are, since they're the first ones, they're going up to about $100 a model, depending on where you're at and how much you have to pay for shipping. So, somebody has great incentive to recast one of these guys. I think it would be harder to do, though, because these guys have to be hollow on the inside. And there's just, it's pretty easy to spot if you got to fake one of these, just because they're so old, especially when you strip everything off of them. See the Cobra back on him. No matter how much I clean it, it wants to have this dark hue to it. It just has like this natural stain in it, which doesn't matter for when you paint it. But I know this guy's legit. I know I have a legit seller of these, and I know I can get another one, and I think I will, just because they were the first Terminator ever made, right? And then when you get a model like this, who, this is a very rare unreleased Ogren, right? His arm came off. I can look at the pewter underneath his arm, and it's nothing as shiny, even with the light on it. It's nothing as shiny as this, especially this guy's legs. The legs, to my eye, they almost look like they're covered in a little bit of mercury. They have like a different level of shine on them. So this is something that everybody needs to watch out for, that's trying to buy old school Rogue Trader models, or just any of the old armies, any of the old pewter models that are actually becoming collectibles and worth money. Be very careful. And if they come painted, you might just want to strip that paint off and see what's underneath, right? Oh, the other thing too, this guy, he came right apart. He came right apart, and all the paint flaked off in the alcohol. You know why? Because the glue has probably only been on him for a month. So those glue bonds, they're never going to be as good as something that was glued for 30 years, okay? There was glue on this guy's butt. It literally took a month of soaking him in alcohol and scrubbing that glue just to get it off. And the paint wasn't coming off of it either, because it's been there for so long. And that's what you would expect from an OG like this guy. This guy, you put him in the alcohol, the glue disintegrated instantly, the gun came apart, this guy came apart, and then I could literally run my nail across the gun and all of the paint would peel off, including the primer underneath it. So that's a big one. When paint and primer are coming off at the same time, that's a big deal. I just pulled this guy out, and like I said, I'm very happy that even after I scrub him like this, the primer's not coming off of him. Like it will, I just have to scrub on it and leave it in there longer. But you can see how the primer's actually stuck onto it. It doesn't want to come off. Some of these pewter models, like this hammer, hold on, let's see. Look how easy that thing bends. It bends back out and it locks, but I don't want to do that too much more because the hammer will break off. The point is, this actually looks to me like a pewter hammer that's been around for 30 years and it's been bent a few times and unbent. Of course, these are things you can fake on a model, but I doubt they'd be smart enough to figure out, hey, we need to bend some of this pewter to make it look like, it's been getting bent here and there for the past 30 years. I'm not trying to break this hammer, so I'm not going to mess with it. I could always glue it back, but I don't want to. I'd rather just leave it intact. But the same thing with this thing, right? This thing's kind of a little crooked. It needs to be straightened out. I'm scared it'll break off here. If this was a recast, all of this stuff would probably be perfectly straight and it would just look too clean, too good. And if you try to take the paint off of it, like I said, the primer and the paint above it would just come off very easily, and you wouldn't get a model that's just like stained with old residue primer that's not coming off, even in an alcohol bath. So I was happy to find out that this guy, who you can clearly see from here is shiny as hell, is the only counterfeit that I managed to get. I never cared about buying him as a collectible. I just wanted another squat with a gun so I could have a little squad of squats to go against the orcs and the chaos squats. So honestly, I don't care that he's counterfeit. Look at the other squats I got. That's a legit squat. You see the difference? Just the difference in the shade. It's a darker pewter, and this guy just got washed and washed again. Yeah, he's just like a completely different tone. He's darker than the shiny guy. Here's another squat. He's a little bit lighter, but we actually zoom in. You can tell he's a lot more faded. He's a lot more cloudy. This guy actually shines, and the paint wouldn't come off that easily from this guy. So these two are legit, and this guy is just too damn shiny. Even one of the old Rogue Trader pirates, you can see he's a different hue, and this guy's just shiny as hell. So I think this is a pretty good example. I wish I had a better camera to show. So you can very easily pick out the counterfeit here. I pray that we don't get any more counterfeits. I mean, I don't really mind recast of the new models. Cool, it'll save you $100. But if you get a recast of these old collectible ones, you're going to be getting ripped off $100, and that's if you're lucky. It might even be more depending on how much some of these models are worth. Again, just this guy with a wrench right here, I'm seeing him go for a couple $100 because he's unlisted. He was never released. You can't find him. The Ogren, I don't even know how much he's worth because he's unlisted. You can only find a few pictures of him online. They never released him, and he's authentic. These guys are about $100 for the original Terminators. Again, as long as they're actually authentic, which this guy is. And this guy's probably worth $2 instead of the $20 that I paid for him. I wondered why I got such a good deal on a squat with a big gun. It's because he's a recast. The most important thing was to make sure that all these guys are real, though. And they are, because this guy's easily a couple $100 model. You can't find him anywhere. So I got to breathe a sigh of relief today after a pretty big concern. And I just wanted to put this out there so anybody else that's collecting kind of knows what to look out for. Because with these pewter models, you can get tricked pretty easily if you don't know what you're looking for, and if you're not watching to see how quickly the paint comes off and stuff like that. If you want any more information on this, go to worthpoint.com or just type in some of these rare models. They'll come up on WorthPoint, which is an auction site, and they will tell you like everything that we sell is legitimate, and it goes on a grading scale, and it will tell you uh, a lot of the collectible pewter models being sold on eBay are recast knockoffs, and it will tell you right there uh, the pewter that they're made out of will be shiny because the models were just made a month ago, as opposed to the legitimate models that are 30 years old, and they're going to have a darker, cloudier material. So I hope this helps anybody out there. I wish I had a better camera to show some of this, but I think you guys can see. I think you guys can see that out of everyone here, this fool just shines the most. For some reason, like especially his legs, like they're just shiny. They're just so shiny, and he was so quick to get the paint off of. So hope this helps anybody. Careful out there on eBay. Ask lots of questions. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, or if I missed anything, please feel free to leave me a comment. And hope you all have a good day. Later.